So if you've got a really gorgeous, high quality product, then you owe it to yourself to make sure that your brand reflects that and sets the tone for the quality of what you do.
So hello and welcome. Today I have with me the lovely Hannah Belton from Ditto. Now Hannah is a creative director and brand consultant at Ditto Creative, and they work with small businesses and solo entrepreneurs to create brand identities that really capture the magic of their clients' businesses. And they are amazing at what they do. Hannah recently done the Jewellers Academy rebrand. So anyone that's been party to seeing the change from Jewellery School Online to Jewellers Academy, Hannah is the brains behind all of that. And she's done some really beautiful brands, some really beautiful jewelry brands as well. So I wanted to invite her on to talk to us a bit about her process, what we can do as designers, and how to really create beautiful brands to represent our jewelry in the best way. So welcome, Hannah. Thank you for being
here. Thank you for having me.
No, it's wonderful. It's Hannah is a wealth of knowledge, so I feel very lucky to be interviewing you today. So we'll go ahead and get straight into it, and I think things will come out as we go along. So to start off with, what is branding? Is it just a logo? What is it, and why is it important for jewelry designers?
Okay, so branding is about so much more than just having a pretty logo. It's really about what people expect, experience, and remember of your brand. So it's about using your visual identity and your tone of voice and just every last little element of communicating about your business to really capture the essence of what you do, set the expectation for the quality of the beautiful work that you create, and create a mood around your brand that gets people excited and ultimately gets people ready to do business with you.
Absolutely. And what can we do? Like, what practical steps can we take to kind of make that happen? Because I often find with branding, it can feel so out there. It can feel so kind of not solid, kind of like what's the first step if we're thinking about how to create a beautiful brand, or maybe we've got a brand, but we know that we need to do more with it. What would be the first thing that you would recommend?
Okay, so the first thing is absolutely to get focused on what it is that you do, which sounds obvious because you're a jewelry designer, but really getting clear on your style, the kind of work that you'd love to be doing, and what makes you different. And I don't think, you can't create a powerful brand without being really, really clear on the fundamentals of what makes your business so special. So it's about creating something that is discernibly different from everything else out there, and creating a bit of a personality around what you do. And that's really the starting point, is getting good and focused.
Yeah, so kind of identifying how you're different perhaps to other jewelers. Because I guess branding is kind of communicating that message. So until you've got that message, it's hard to, it can be hard to communicate something that you're not clear on yourself. And that's something we did quite a lot of work together with, didn't we, about Jewellers Academy when we first started with the branding. Hannah gave me this giant questionnaire, which was great. All these different things to help kind of work out, okay, who are we targeting? What are we about? And then work on how we can communicate that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're running. If you don't have the focus, you're going to find it really hard. But also, it's really, really difficult to be objective about your own business. And all of us so easily overlook the best bits of what we do because we take them for granted. We're just a bit too close. So it can be really useful to have a kind of trusted business friend, or even some customers perhaps that you've known for a very long time, who you can ask and say, what is it that brought you to my business? What made you choose my business over the next one? Because there'll probably be something about what you do that is really what everyone else values, but you just completely miss it yourself, and you can't tell that story if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a really good point, that if you ask customers or other people that know about your business, then often they'll reflect back to you a way better version of what you do than because you're so involved and sort of thinking about the
Yeah.
yeah, lovely.
Even when we did our rebrand a few years ago, we fell into the same trap. I just thought that people were coming to us for brand design, but actually, the result of having a beautiful brand is the confidence that it gives people and the ability to move their business forward. And that's actually the much more powerful thing of what we do. And the visuals are almost a sideline to that. I mean, obviously, the designers would kill me for saying that, but that's really the case. It's about kind of growing your business.
Yeah, because I guess if you know you've got a really strong brand, you've invested in it, whether it's time or money, and you sort of feel like, I know my colours, I know my typography, I know what I stand for, then when you're selling or when you're doing things in your business, you just have such a lot of confidence in what you are and who you are. And that probably really comes across as well.
It makes decisions so much easier. And even in terms of, if you're perhaps looking to get your jewellery into some shops or galleries, or you wanted to try and partner up with someone, then it can help you to decide who's going to be a good fit. Because not everyone is in the market for what you do. There's a market for everything, but you really need, with your branding, to get very clear on who it is that is most going to love what you do, and then creating something that's going to reach those people. And that's right down from the way you communicate to even the other brands that you partner with and other decisions that you might make along the way. So it really does have a fundamental impact on your business.
No, I can see that. And I think, so if you're a brand, of any kind, and you're sort of thinking, I roughly know what I do, but how do I make up my solid identity? Are there any kind of techniques that you use or things that you found helpful to actually get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm not just a jewelry designer, I am this type of jewelry designer and this is what I stand for?
Absolutely. So we use a process called colour psychology, which is really all about marrying up your brand intention and your brand values with a sort of style that's best going to reflect what you do. The thing that makes it powerful, you hear colour psychology and you think, oh, it's just going to be about helping me to choose the colour for my business, which it will do, but greater than that, when you understand the kind of the essence of what makes your business special, then you can start to understand how to translate that through the way that you communicate. So colour psychology is a massive subject. We could go on about it for hours. But if it's something that you're interested in, you really want to take your branding up to another level, I'd really, really recommend doing some research into colour psychology. And there are some really great books out there that you can buy as well that will really walk you through the process. And particularly if you're considering a rebrand, colour psychology is a good place to start. It'll get you focused.
Amazing. And are there any books that you particularly recommend people to have a look at that you've enjoyed? Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lady called Fiona Humberstone, the brand stylist, and she has written a couple of books. I think the first one was How to Style Your Brand, and the second was Brand Brilliance. You can get both of them really easily on Amazon. And I think the way that she writes, she definitely follows the colour psychology process. And it's a really great introduction to branding your small business. That's a really good place to start.
Wonderful. And we also talked a bit about, in our rebrand, the different sort of season personalities, which I think was kind of included in the books that you've spoken about. And I found that so helpful, looking at the kind of spring, summer, autumn, winter, and kind of picking a season or a couple of seasons that really relate to your business helps to, again, in that decision-making process about what colours should I have, what kind of look and feel should my website have, and my packaging and all the different kind of elements of my business.
Absolutely. The thing with the colour psychology process is it brings a really lovely level of objectivity to something that can be so subjective. And if you've ever tried to tackle a rebrand on your own, then you'll know it very, very quickly becomes about trying to chase the trends, or about using blue because your competitor uses pink, and kind of just creating something that sort of appeals to your personal tastes, but having no clue as to whether that's actually right for your business. And what colour psychology does is it really gives you a framework and enables you to be more strategic as well. So, for example, we're working with another jewellery business at the moment, And on paper, her business looks like quite an autumnal business. She's got very strong links with nature. Nature definitely inspires all of her work and all of her designs. And she really loves that kind of earthy, relaxed, understated sort of style. But actually, she's just created an incredible range of wedding and engagement rings, which takes her business up a level and means that her brand now needs to be perceived as much more polished and much more aspirational than perhaps it has been in the past. You know, the kind of price level that she's playing at has changed entirely. There's a lot that's changed. So what we're going to be doing is introducing some of the summer personality to her brand, which has got that more kind of refined, luxury, beautiful, timeless element to it that will just reflect where she wants to go with her business and really create a vehicle for her to be able to charge the rates that she wants and appeal to the sorts of people that are going to have that kind of money to spend.
Yeah, and it's really interesting talking about value, money, high-end jewelers versus sort of more mid-range. What can branding do? Because a lot of us as jewelers, we might spend quite a lot of time, quite a lot of money on the materials, the tools, making a piece, and then we might go to a craft fair or somewhere, and people say, "Well, I can buy that cheaper, or something similar cheaper somewhere else. It's too expensive." And I feel like branding has some of the answer to that. So what do you think branding can do around value to help people to charge more, to charge what they're worth?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the first thing is that if you're having people come to you and telling you that you're too expensive, then don't listen to those people, go somewhere else. I think there's a lot to be said about picking the market that you're in. So if you know that you've got a high-end product, then think about where you're going to be taking yourself to sell that product. But also, your brand, your visual brand, creates the expectation for what people are prepared to pay. So if you've got a premium range and your prices are several £100s upwards, but your visual identity looks a little bit handmade and a little bit DIY, then realistically, you're really going to struggle to command that higher rate when your brand looks a little bit amateur, because the thing here is that reality is not reflected in what you're telling people. So, and that's really what branding's about. But at the same time, I think we'll all be familiar to the idea of seeing businesses who look terribly expensive, that actually we know their quality is a little bit pants, and they can kind of only get away with charging what they do because they look very polished. That's not fair. So if you've got a really gorgeous, high quality product, then you owe it to yourself to make sure that your brand reflects that and sets the tone for the quality of what you do.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That's so powerful, isn't it? I think a lot of us underestimate the power of branding. We sort of think initially, we think I need a logo, I need some colours, I need to roughly look like I've got a business that looks,
yeah.
And that's the first year in business, right? But once we get past the kind of experimental stage, I've learned recently, partly from doing the rebrand and also just from sort of picking up from other businesses, that it can be make or break. It can be the difference between being able to charge, into the hundreds, into the thousands, compared with perhaps having exactly the same product, but not represented in such a way. And I think you're right. It's that mismatch. People are like, well, the product's really good, but you're not selling me that. It's not obvious through your website, through your Instagram, through your images, through your branding. So I think just knowing the power of it can make a real difference, because then we get motivated to actually really do something about it, because it's not always easy, is it? Going through a rebrand or
No, I mean, it's a big thing to do, but when you think, well, actually this rebrand could have the power to catapult my business from kind of struggling along to get a few orders to really throwing the doors open to do the best work, the work that you dream of doing, then that's, I think, quite a liberating thought, and that's real motivation to get stuck into that rebrand.
And that's a really interesting point that you just mentioned about the work that you dream of doing, because I think when you're looking at your brand or rebranding or creating a brand, it's also about thinking, not just where are you now, but where do you really want to be? And that kind of aspirational. I know we talked quite a lot about that in terms of the branding that we did together. And yeah, how great would it be if every client was your dream client to work with?
Absolutely, and we've been through that process. I think there's an awful lot of parallels between most creative businesses, to be honest, whether you're a jewellery designer or a brand designer. And I know certainly a few years back, we were struggling to win the sort of clients that we wanted. And ultimately, it's because the perception we were putting out there, it wasn't going to attract those people. So I know how completely transformative it can be when your brand really sets the tone for where you want to be, and you can start to attract attention from the right people, and really shift your business from being just about getting by and just about paying the bills to doing the best work and having people come from all over the world to work with you. And that's just so incredibly rewarding, not just financially, but emotionally as well. Like, everyone wants to do work that is really valued and appreciated.
Absolutely. No, it's great. Wonderful. So we talked a little bit about trends, and obviously there are design trends, there are trends in jewelry, but there are also trends in branding. What should we follow trends? Are they useful in terms of people noticing us? Or if we shouldn't, how do we kind of avoid them when they're everywhere and kind of
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. I mean, I think if part of your business model is creating jewelry that translates, I don't know, the catwalk trends to making them more accessible, then fine, follow the trends. But it sounds a bit exhausting, doesn't it? You'd be constantly recreating new pieces all the time. I don't like trends very much, actually. I think you should go find your own way of doing things. It's far more, it's liberating, again, to use that word, and it creates something that's yours. I think it's really dangerous following trends because you don't end up with anything that's discernibly different. Just going to look like everyone else. I remember a few years ago in jewellery design and photographers all seemed to be using calligraphy fonts. I don't know if you remember, it was all about peony pink and calligraphy fonts. And that was quite fashionable for a while, but it meant that everyone had calligraphy fonts and peony pink. It was really weird. And how can you choose one business over another based on them all looking exactly the same? Yeah. So I think the best thing to do is find your own style, and really celebrate that and create a brand that supports your creative style, rather than trying to follow what everyone else is doing. And in fact, almost to the point of turning your back on even looking at what everyone else is doing, because then you can't be led by them.
Yeah, that's a good way to clear your mind, isn't it? To not get too inspired by others and just start with a clean slate and think, what am I? Who am I? And how do I represent that? And I think another thing about trends is that you start to look dated very quickly, don't you? So like you're saying about the calligraphy and the pink, I guess if you saw that now, it'd be like, oh, that's from 3 or 4 like they haven't updated anything since then. And it's the same in jewelry. Often we look for kind of timeless collections that can, if you're going to invest time and money into something, you don't want it to run out within a few months or however long.
No, I mean, I think the reality is that you probably do need to be prepared to reevaluate your brand every few years, because businesses change. And no matter what you think you might be doing in 5 years' time at this point, that might not have happened, or you might, other opportunities might have cropped up, your style will have evolved, all sorts of things will happen. So I think it's important to remain conscious of your brand, but try to create something that's going to last a while, because it's a big commitment to time and money to do a rebrand. You don't want to do it every 2 years. It's going to be very expensive.
Yeah, it takes quite a lot. So should we be doing our branding ourselves, or is it something that we should outsource? What are the kind of pros and cons of each?
Okay, so I mean, obviously in an ideal world, if money was absolutely no boundary, then I think we'd all be hiring brand consultants to do our brand for us. But that's not always the way, is it? Sometimes we have to work with limited funds. So I think the thing that you will get from working with an agency that you won't get doing a brand yourself is the level of objectivity. Like I was saying earlier, sort of being able to see the wood from the trees, it's really hard to do that for your own business. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever seen a successful DIY brand, because people just they trip themselves up, they just sell themselves short, and it's hard, and then you end up with something a bit mediocre that probably wasn't worth the time anyway. But if you really, really, really have to go DIY, then I would recommend buying some of the books that I mentioned earlier, understanding the colour psychology process, having an insight to that. What that will do is it will help you to more strategically choose the style that you're going to follow, and then look to maybe try and work with, I don't know, someone like a new graduate perhaps, or a freelancer, someone who's got lower overheads and might be more willing to work to a brief. So if you really want to start out budget, that might be the way forward.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's always good to have different options, isn't it? And then if we are at the stage, perhaps we're a bit further along in our business, we have some sales under our belt, and we know that our brand is not representing us properly, and we want to engage with a designer or an agency, how would we go about doing that? Or how do we find someone that's going to work for us? Because if we're investing all that time and money, we want to make sure that we get something that is really, going to make a difference in our business.
Yeah, so that's a really, really big one. Certainly look beyond your own postcode. It's really easy these days to work with people, even internationally. We have clients from all over the world. Distance isn't a barrier to working with someone. So if you've seen a designer that really inspires you and they're based in, well, wherever, then don't be afraid to reach out to them. And look for work that inspires you. So they must have a beautiful portfolio, but speak to people as well. Try not to be too price-led. It's more important that the person you work with or the team that you work with, you feel that they really understand you, and that because you're going to be working with them really closely. So it's important to feel that if you had a question or that something perhaps wasn't going quite right, that you would be able to pick up the phone and speak to them and not feel worried about it. So I would say have a few conversations with maybe 3 different agencies, and just see what feels best. Really go with your gut, I think, is probably the biggest thing. You'll find that most agencies will probably come out around about the same money. Some will be a bit more, some a bit less, but go with the one that feels right for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that, the good agencies normally have a bit of a waiting list. So it's what I found, which is fine normally, but it's just good to make sure they might not be able to work with you for a few months, which is normally good because you can get your images and everything together in that time. And, like I know you've mentioned, Hannah, times when you just had to turn things around really quickly for clients, and you guys are very flexible with that. But something I came across when I was sort of speaking to different places, I sort of thought, oh, you can start tomorrow, and it's like, no, they've got limited time as well. So, and we understand that as jewelers, if we're working on lots of commissions, then there's only so much we can do at a time. So just good to factor that in. So a couple more questions. What are the common mistakes that you see jewelers or brands in general making when they're creating their brand or putting their brands out there?
Okay, the first thing I would say would be underselling themselves. Almost everyone that I've ever met is modest to a fault, and they will go, oh, well, I make nice jewelry, it's good, and actually their work's incredible and it's really, really beautiful, but they're just a little kind of shy to say it. So if you don't feel that you've got the kind of self-confidence to really blow your own trumpet, then recruit some of those friends, recruit some of those clients. This is the biggest thing, actually, I found when we rebranded Ditto. Was speaking to some of our clients was hugely helpful. So the ones that I knew we worked with really, really well, I went back to them and just said, what did you value most about working with us? And if you were going to recommend us to someone else, what kind of words would you be saying? Because that helps you to get a feel for what other people value about what you do in a way that you just wouldn't have thought of yourself. So yeah, underselling yourself would be thing number 1. Don't do it. And the second thing would be consistency. So really making sure that once you've decided what your message is and you kind of know what you're brilliant at and you're going to try and communicate that, then do it everywhere. So we tend to trust what we're familiar with. So and kind of familiarity builds trust. So you need to be saying the same thing over every platform, to really kind of show people that you are what you say you are. And the more times that people see the same message from you, the more it will cement it in their minds that, oh yeah, that's what that person does. And it will mean that when they're in the market for what you do, your business will be the only possible choice because they are so crystal clear on what it is that you do.
Yeah, no, that sounds interesting. And we shouldn't be worried about repetition or saying the same thing too many times. Do you think it's still?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think that's an interesting one, but I suppose as an example, so we talk a lot in our business about brands with purpose and brands with meaning and having personality. So a lot of what we talk about on our social media and on our website and through our email list and everything like that is all about building a personality around your business. Now, obviously, we tell that story in a number of different ways, but it all comes back to that key message. Also, remember that there's a whole sea of noise out there. People who follow you on Instagram follow hundreds of other people just like you. So they're not just going to be seeing your message all the time. They'll be exposed to lots of other messages as well. So a bit of repetition, what in your mind might feel like going, oh, I'm saying the same thing again, to someone else is just reassuring that you are who you say you are.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because we often feel like we're putting so much out there, but actually such a small percentage of that is seen by each individual customer. That is because we need to put like 10 times more out than we want them to actually see, and then they'll actually see some of it. So that does make a lot of sense. And I think you're right with the consistency, because if each time they see you, it's quite different, they're not going to build up that recognizable aspect of like, oh yeah, that's so and so, and I really understand what they do and kind of get them as a business.
Yeah, no, you just want people to be really sure about who you are and what you are, and what your style is.
Definitely. And then a final question before we come to kind of the conclusion. If you had to give a jeweler, any jewelers in general, a top tip around branding, what would that number one top tip be?
Ooh, okay. My top tip would be find your style. Be really, really clear on what your style is. Doesn't matter what it is, but know it, and celebrate it. So if your style is things that are inspired by nature, or your style is geometric designs, or whatever it might be, but find your style and create a brand that supports and celebrates the thing that only you can do.
Oh, that's lovely. I love the word celebrate. I think that's such a good way to encapsulate what we want a brand to do. It's not like a boring thing that sort of says this is what I do, but it's like, yay, this is what I do.
Yeah, it's about celebrating the magic of your business. Like, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. That's been really helpful and hopefully very inspiring to people who are looking to develop their brand or engage with a brand consultancy. Now, if anyone wanted to work with you or find out more about you and your business, where could they go or what could they do?
Okay, so you could go to our website, which is ditto.uk.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Ditto Creative, if you want to come and give me a little follow.
She's lovely on Instagram. Lots of like lots of beautiful countryside, lovely designs. So yeah, I recommend following just for that, and you know the rest of it is all great too.
Thank you.
Right, well, thank you so much for being here today, and you know for spending your time talking with us. And I'm sure we'll catch up very soon.
Lovely. Thanks, Jess.